Hello and welcome to the CLB Forge podcast. This is the show to help equip you and your church for mission, ministry, and multiplying disciples. I'm Mike Natal.
And I'm Ryan Nelson. Welcome to episode 23. Wherein we do the 23rd episode of the show.
Wow, that was
smooth,
riveting. Huh? Real smooth. We're definitely going to leave that in. That sounds great. Ryan, I'm encouraged to be here face-to-face with you. We got a great scenery in the back, and we're in person with each other. It's always good during this COVID time to be able to spend time with people. What?
Yeah, and especially this one. This one's going to really sting people because it's the end of summer. It's the second to last day of August. Some people call it August 30. But this, I think we'll be watching this in the deep of fall.
Oh my. Yeah, so people will be like, oh man, I miss days like this. That's what people are going to be thinking when they watch this episode. So it's a great episode. It's one of the ones that you did without me. That's probably what makes it so great.
No, it was sad. So even though we're showing this second, it's the first interview I did without you, and it really was a bummer to not have you there.
I mean, it wasn't a bummer. Sarah did a great job. It was great.
Oh yeah,
it was a bummer not to have me.
I missed you.
Yeah, I missed
Sarah
you
was
too.
fantastic.
Yeah, Sarah was fantastic. It was really great.
Welcome, Sarah. Welcome to the CLB Forge podcast. It's great to have you here.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, this is it's fun to be with you here at Tuscarora. We're in the is it the fireside?
We're in the inn lounge.
The inn lounge.
Yeah.
Just off the main dining hall.
Right.
Here at Tuscarora. This is the first show I've done without Mike on site. And so I just feel obligated. If he were here, he'd probably, because I know you guys are friends, so he'd probably say something like he slept in your basement or your car for a month or
and
something
I'd say,
like
Mike,
that.
why are you sleeping in my basement?
Yeah, okay. Does any kind of strange
Mike stories?
Mike stories we need to establish?
We can tell while he's not here.
Yeah.
I noticed, Mike, you're missing my podcast, not... noting that. No, well, kind of like I was joking earlier, Mike's always circling my orbit. I worked at Tuscarora, then I kind of moved on. Mike worked at Tuscarora. I went to Penn State. Mike went to Penn State, and now I'm at Tuscarora again. Is Mike coming back? I don't know. I don't want to start rumors, but if the trend continues, who knows?
Good to know.
Yeah.
Good to know.
Yeah.
All right.
No, Mike's great. Love that guy.
So, Sarah, can you tell us a little bit about your spiritual journey?
I sure can. A big part of it involves Tuscarora. So I grew up coming to Tuscarora. I'm local to Mount Bethel. We moved here from New Jersey when I was 5 and started coming to junior week as a camper. Summer after 5th grade, and accepted Christ here in the gym. Very, very clearly remember the experience, the feeling of my body and everything, and walked up. That's when the stage was there, and it had the pull-out portion, and we walked up, and we stood on the lower portion, and very, very clear memory of that. And so junior week has always held an incredibly special place in my heart, as does Tuscarora. And then always grew up going to church, attending youth group, teen choir, I'm a terrible singer, but for some reason I was in teen choir for years, probably because the leader was just too nice to kick me out, or the other kids sang louder than me and I was drowned out. I'm not sure. It could have gone either way. And, when I was in high school, I was a leader for junior high youth group and our after school kids program and VBS, kind of the whole thing. Went to college and walked away from my faith for about 7 years. Not perhaps a little intentionally in the beginning, because I grew up, I had a great life. I wouldn't change a thing. My childhood was incredible. But I got to a point where I thought, grass is always greener, that everybody else, what they were doing just looked fun. And it's not. I didn't like it. But there was a point in college where I could either sit in my apartment by myself on a Friday night or go out with friends. And then I remember I was 25, and there was a very clear moment where I was sitting in the church I was going to at the time, Calvary Church, and I was sitting there, and God spoke very clearly to me and said, I need you back now. I'm not done. And so I was like, okay. And then kind of took a little bit of time. I didn't dive right back into, I'll say, ministry, because I don't think that that's something that should happen. But spent some time kind of coming back to God, ended a relationship I was in, things like that. And then God said, I want you to be a youth leader. And I said, they seem like they have a lot of heavy problems, like, drugs and teen pregnancy. And God, that's not for me. Let me help with 4th grade Sunday school. That must be what you meant. So I volunteered for a year for 4th and 5th grade Sunday school. And at the end, God was like, hey, are you done? Now I want you to go do youth ministry. And I was like, oh, all right. Wow. So I went and I joined, I did youth ministry as a leader for a year or two. And then coincidentally, right when the group of students I had were graduating, in State College, it's a very transient community. So the youth leaders, you had a plethora of them because you had college students coming out of your ears, but then they'd come and they'd go a lot. So I absorbed some kids, and we combined guys and girls, and the 11th graders, their leader had graduated and was leaving. So I had them for 11th grade and 12th grade, and it was incredible. And it really makes you feel old when you attend their weddings and then they start having babies. But we had an incredible 2 years. And then right when my kids were graduating, coincidentally in the church, there was some movement, and the youth pastor was moving to a different position. So they had asked me to take over. So I was the youth director for a number of years at Calvary, and absolutely loved doing youth ministry. And then that just kind of came to an end. Again, Calvary did some shuffling of leadership positions again, and they put the guy who had been the youth pastor back in the position he had been in. And so that was that. And I think I was angry at God for a little bit, whether I should have been angry at God or not, because I just didn't understand. It was something I loved doing, and I was very passionate about it, and I felt like it had been taken away from me. And so I was still in State College. We were living there and had a great church, and everything. And then I've been involved in Junior Week. I was involved for 16 years, and it was fantastic. I was a counselor. I kind of worked my way up, and then I was on the leadership team for a number of years. And that was just an incredible, so much of my life and my journey can be traced back to Junior Week, whether it be as a camper or a part of the counselors or the leadership staff. And I was here for a planning meeting, which we'd have every spring. And then Paul called me. I'm answering a different question, so let's pause. And you'll have to cut that part out. I realized I was going into how I ended up at Tuscarora.
Yeah, no problem. That's fine. You could roll with that. So I can relate to just Tuscarora being a part of your spiritual journey, because I grew up in the church and grew up knowing God, but I had a special moment in my spiritual journey here too. So when I was at Junior Week, I experienced conviction of sin and assurance of salvation here in the most poignant. Not every moment on one's spiritual journey is a punctiliar thing, but I had one of those here. So, yeah, that's a life changer. Go ahead.
I was going to say, so for a number of years, I would come back, a couple of times a year for Junior Week planning meetings, but I'd come back once a year for Junior Week. And I could say every year I encountered God here. Not that I didn't encounter him throughout the other 51 weeks in my day-to-day life, but I always encountered God at Tuscarora. And I would always go drive back home to State College and say to my family, like, I'd move back there. I love it there. And I do think part of that is my childhood was here, but there was a closeness to God every time I set foot on the grounds of Tuscarora.
Going through that spiritual journey, were there particular people that had a big influence in your life along the way?
Yes. So going, and I don't know if this is going all the way back. I mean, I think, doesn't everyone to some extent remember a Sunday school teacher or somebody who just made them feel special or loved or something? So, I mean, I think there's that answer. Alan Oss was my youth leader when I was in high school, and Alan was such a calm, steady Eddie for all of the, which is just his personality, but in all of the teenage angst and, and who likes who, but he would go to your sporting events. He would be there. He was just always there.
Yeah.
And while, and what they say is like, if you're a pastor, people may not remember your sermon or something, but like that's like, I couldn't sit here and tell you necessarily the things he taught us or talked about when we were at youth group. But what I remember is that every Sunday night they invited us into their home, he and Carol, and we had a Bible study. And that I remember, the eating together and the fellowship and the being cared for and loved, and I think that was something that I always tried to do when I was a youth director, is that caring in those extra ways for those students. And I would say even through Junior Week leadership, Eric and Janine McCann have been a part of my life since I was 18 years old. And, again, it wasn't like we sat down at a leadership course and they taught me things, but seeing them do ministry and getting to walk alongside of them as part of that in the Junior Week structure, I learned a lot. And not only from a spiritual side, but just how to lead in ministry too. So there was I'll say the spiritual biblical portion of it, of leadership as well, but just how to lead well.
Yeah.
And then there's been just a few other people who I'll say God maybe only plopped into my life for a season, a shorter season than maybe some of the other examples I've given, but or just watching. Part of my personality is I'm an observer, and so like observing the quieter, peaceful elements of discipleship and understanding that listening, how important listening is, which is something I perhaps don't do well, and more observing other people in leadership. So maybe not a direct one-on-one discipleship, but observing other people in ministry and seeing what they're doing, and trying to absorb some of that and take it on and try it out in my own life.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah. That's great. So now you're here serving at Tuscarora. How did you wind up working here, and what is the role that you have here? So my
official title is program manager.
Okay.
And how I ended here is we joke around. Like I said earlier, I kept coming back for Junior Week every year, but we'd have planning meetings, and kind of when it was over, we'd have an evaluation meeting. And so I was here throughout the year. I would bring my youth group kids to winter weekend and stuff. So I was popping in and out of Tuscarora throughout the year. And one day we were here for a Junior Week planning meeting, and Paul DeQuattro called me into his office, and he pitched this idea to me, and I stared at him and I said, well, I don't hate it. To which I think he was taken aback by my answer. And I said, but like, let me think about it, And I drove home, and I'm like, ugh. No, so both my husband, Mark, and I are from this area. So we both grew up here. And then when we kind of graduated, we ended up not here, and eventually got married, and we're living in State College at the time. And I was like, man, how am I going to pitch that? How am I going to sell this to Mark? And so he traveled, his old job, he used to travel for work. So I got home, he left for work. We didn't see each other it was like just this comical series of events where I was like stewing on this, and I'm like, So then we talk about it, and we're both internal processors. By the time one of us comes to a decision, it's been stewed on for a while.
Okay.
So he's like, all right, because every time I said, oh, I could move back there. He was always like, I don't want to, a small town. No, I like it here. I don't want to go back. And we had a great church. We owned our home. We had an established, set of friends. Like there was no reason to leave. Long story short, we decided to move, and we came here in June 4 years ago, and we told Brian and Paul, we said, yep, we'll take the job. We worked out some details, and then we went home and told our community and state college, and I think they thought we were nuts because they didn't know we had been thinking about this since March. It looked to them that we just sprung this on them, and then we were saying, hey, in five weeks, we're out of here. We sold our house, and when God's good, and when he wants something done, he makes things happen. So our house sold quickly, and our son Michael is adopted, and we had only been back in the United States with him for 8 months. So we're like, is this the most ridiculous thing to like uproot his life again? And one of a spiritual mentor from Calvary Church said to me, based on his personality type, he thrives with change. And while you aren't good at change, Sarah, he's going to do fine. And she was absolutely right. And so that was like the thing. There was one of our gathering pastors at Calvary who didn't normally do the preaching, did the preaching on it was a Memorial Day weekend of 2016. He gave the sermon, and it was about basically putting the car into gear and going, and you can't sit there idling or you're never going to go anywhere. And it was like God could not have been more clear that this is where I don't like change. I was comfortable. Like I said, everything, there was no reason to change everything. And God just kind of kept making it so abundantly clear, as he does sometimes. So then the following weekend, or the first weekend in June, we came out here, we told Paul and Brian, and we were living here that August.
Wow.
So it was good. And it's been exciting and fun. And, like I said, there's the good, the bad, and the ugly. You have good days, you have bad days, but you have days where, even just recently, at junior week, when the kids pray for the meals, man, they're short prayers, but they are powerful. And those kids, they don't make their prayers flowery or polished. They just pray for what they're thinking, and it's beautiful. Yeah, and so it's just real. Things like that. Yeah. Yes.
Yeah.
And just listening to that is just, it's like, okay, like I smiled every single time. I'd have, my eyes closed, my head down, and I would just be smiling. And I'm like, God, I love that I'm getting to hear this, and just hearing it reminds you why I'm here and what God wants me to do, because it's easy to get bogged down in details and nitty gritty. And it's fun to see the ministry happening and see the fellowship and see God moving here, because it's so evident if you're looking for it to see that. And that just, it invigorates you.
Oh, wow. That's neat. So you've been serving here 4 years?
4 years, yeah.
4 years, okay. So what are some of your main responsibilities as the program manager?
So as the program manager, so Tuscarora has 16 or so Tuscarora sponsored or co-sponsored retreats throughout the year from January to December, and so my job is to plan or work with the planning committee if we're co-sponsoring it, but to plan and organize and then execute the retreat, and then the follow-up things, just notes, things to do differently, or, for the next year, financial reports, things like that. So kind of the closeout tasks, if you will, for each. So there's sort of a life cycle for each retreat, identifying the speaker and the worship, and, who's the demographic attending the retreat, who's the speaker that's going to, kind of reach them the most. And again, that's something where I can sit there and leave God completely out of it and Google it and be like, well, this person looks good, and and they're not that expensive. Let's have them. But it's important to pray and think and plan and have the person God wants here, not just the first person that turns up that's good speaker for women's event or something like that, and just making sure that it's the right person. There's a lot of moving parts, which I think I I learn as I go, and everything. And again, I was trained as well as I could be. It was great. But there's always, everything's different. Each retreat, even though it might be a couples retreat every year, it's different couples and it's different people and everything. And so there's a lot of prayer and planning that goes into wanting it to be the best. People spent money to be here. They got a dog sitter, a sitter. They dropped the kids off at the grandparents. They did a lot of work to be here and give Tuscarora their time. So I want to make sure that their time here is what they need and what they deserve.
Wow. Yeah, that's great. So what's it been like? So for those of you who are listening or watching, it's right. We're recording this in August 2020.
Yes.
Magical year.
Whoa. That's a nice way to put it.
We're in the middle of the COVID pandemic.
Yeah.
What's it been like to serve here over the past 6 months that we've been experiencing this really
It's been wild.
tumultuous time?
So it started off, I think like everybody, just everything was unknown. And every 4 hours, you had a plan that you developed with the team at 9:30 that morning. And by 1 p.m., you had to throw that plan out the window because some new announcement had happened and everything. I think collectively our number one desire was how, we do ministry. How do we do ministry? And again, this has been, I'm not answering, I guess, chronologically. It has been, well, ministry can still be done. It just might look different. Every retreat from late March on, we were like, oh, okay, this will be over. We'll be able to have this retreat. Oh, okay, nope, we had to cancel that one. Okay, well, we're definitely going to be able to have this retreat at the end of the month. Oh, no, we had to cancel that one too. There was our leadership and our board of directors met for many times and many hours and did a lot of data crunching and critical decision making that I quite frankly don't envy that I didn't need to be part of it. But then they were so good about involving the leadership team physically here on site and just asking us questions and everything. And the people of Tuscarora, the guests were so, you just get emails, hey, we're praying for you. Like it was kind of like, oh my gosh, like that means a lot because you didn't have to think about me and pray for me. You definitely didn't have to email me to tell me that you were thinking about me and praying for me, but you did both of those things to be like, this is bigger than just, us here with, oh, how do we do this? That the people out there care about us. And that was so uplifting. There's a short, I was in the office by myself. It was lonely. We kept our office open, and so we'd have one person working at a time. And one day I noticed the office garbage. I mean, we weren't generating any garbage, but eventually after a while it needed to be emptied. So I collected it and I walked it out to our dumpster and I threw it. And as I walked back, I turned around and there was a lamppost with all these beautiful spring flowers that had bloomed. And I stopped and I said out loud, I was like, God, you did this just for me, because that was one of the things during the spring where all the daffodils and the tulips were in bloom all over the grounds, and there was no one here to enjoy them. And I think that's when it hit me how sad it was. And I was like, people are missing. There's always people here in April, May, and they're missing this. And then, but that day when I brought the garbage out and I turned around and I'm like, God, you did this just for me, because there is no one else here, but you made all these flowers. And I could have been lost in my own thoughts. I could have taken a different path back to get back into the office, but I walked this particular way past this lamppost, and you helped me. I stopped, and it was kind of that moment to stop and be like, God, you're good. You're in this, and you're still blooming flowers places in amidst this weird time where no one knows what's going on, and we're all just sort of, I guess, pretending and trying to make the best decisions we can with the information we have. And so that was a moment where I was like, okay. And through this, just remembering, God, what do you want us to be learning here? You're not, this isn't happening just for because where do you want us? What do you want us to be hearing? What do you want us to be learning? What do you want us to be changing or doing differently? And like make us moldable in your hands, so that way I don't want this to come to an end and then have us collectively as Tuscarora or me personally just pick up and move on and go, oh, okay, well, the global pandemic's over. We'll just go back to doing things the way we are. Like you're moving. Help us not to miss where you're moving, so we can see that and join you in that work and go do what you need us to be doing.
Wow. Yeah. Well, I'm really excited to talk with you today. One of the main subjects that I wanted to discuss with you today was about leadership and management. Mm-hmm. And these are skills that every ministry leader needs. And yet often they're overlooked. Pastors don't get a lot of that training usually in seminary, and ministry leaders, it's hard for ministry leaders to get that kind of training too. And yet some of those skills are so critical, especially now. So I'm really excited to talk to you a little bit about some of your leadership and management experiences and skills, thoughts you have. I was wondering, who are the people or, excuse me. I was wondering, who are the people or the experiences that have shaped your leadership skills the most? Are there people or specific experiences that have really impacted who you are as a leader and manager?
So to note, my career did not begin in ministry. My degree is in IT, and I worked for a number of years for Raytheon. They're a subcontractor for the Department of Defense, so that's kind of as far away from ministry as you can get. I had no idea what I was doing, to be perfectly honest. Thank goodness for on-the-job training and people who took me under their wing. And so, but I will say, I worked my way up the chain there. Again, looking back, I'm like, I was 20-something. I had no idea how I worked my way up the chain is beyond me. But I was in charge of our server support group. And Raytheon has multiple sites, the biggest ones being Massachusetts, Texas, Colorado, and then Pennsylvania. And so my boss actually sat in Colorado. So I learned a lot. I can do time zones really well from working there. But my boss for a time there, he was very just maybe laid back is the right word. He was just very accepting. He was willing to come alongside of me. Maybe he was clued into the fact that I didn't know what I was doing, but he came alongside, and if a mistake was made, or he taught me. It wasn't a go do this and then you did it wrong. He taught me, and he really helped me move up the chain within that company and that department. And then he actually left for another job, but it was very encouraging to just have someone be so supportive, and that would like call and check in and truly cared how you were doing, and you weren't just another name who worked for that person. There was a true, I guess maybe that's a long way to say relationship. Mm-hmm. And whether I could have named that at the time or not, but there was that, hey, I care about you as one of the people who work for me. You're not just somebody who works for me. And then as I transitioned into, when I lived in State College, I worked for Calvary Church. Mm-hmm. Great place, great pastors, great staff there. And the gentleman I worked for, we were wired probably very similarly. Very much, I was probably more on the extroverted side of our personality type, and he was probably more on the introverted side, but we had fun together, because I think we were so much alike. So we just worked really well together. We both like details. Okay. And he was such a patient man. something is not in the top 10 of my personality characteristics, I dare say. And so having him just show I mean, with not all the staff who worked, he was our associate pastor, and he sort of, I guess, was our quasi like HR finance guy as well, although that wasn't officially on his title. But just seeing how well he dealt with the other people on staff, and just the different relationships, and the hard conversations, and your normal conversations about, hey, you need to hand in your time card type thing. And then I think too, even just as my career has moved or changed, just seeing different leadership styles, and understanding how my own leadership style works with theirs, because I think too, working together is the most important. And then just seeing, where can leaders fill in each other's gaps? Everybody has their strengths and weaknesses. So where can my strengths help your weaknesses, and where can your strengths help mine? And making sure that people are operating in their sweet spot. Where's the area that they're passionate about? They might be good at 3 different areas, but they might be super passionate about this 1 or 2. And is, as leaders, are you working in your, are all the employees working in their sweet spots, and complementing each other well with their leadership styles?
Leadership and management are both such important skills for ministry, and yet they're very different from each other. What do you think are some of the key differences? How do you distinguish?
That is an excellent question.
Those two, and why are they both important for ministry? They can seem like very unspiritual topics, and I think we can confuse the two with each other as well.
Managers or managing gets things done. You get from A to Z. Leadership, you're developing others. You might still get from A to Z, but you're developing others. You're improving the process that you took to get there. So that, I think that's my initial thought is that doesn't mean one's better than the other. They're both important. And in ministry, I mean, it's something that, hey, every weekend you have to have a service. That's no matter what you're good at or what you do, people are going to show up on Sunday morning, and you have to have something ready, right? So, but I do, leadership helps, looks around, finds where are the areas where improvement doesn't mean that what's happening is bad, but where's things how can we make things better or improve this thing or that thing. And management is, hey, we started the Sunday service, we got the doors unlocked, the place was clean, the chairs were set up, and people were there. We had the songs, we had the sermon, we did communion, and we left and we said, see everybody later. And that you manage an event, you manage a thing, and you get from A to Z. But like leadership encompasses the whole. You're still having your Sunday service, but how are you making it better? How are you improving it? How are you making it the best experience for the person sitting that took their time to show up?
Yeah, that's a great way to look at it. I mean, leadership it's about, setting direction and guiding and influencing others as you go, bringing other people into leadership, leading change, evaluating what's happening, and management is very much about carrying out the tasks, whatever you've decided to do. carrying that out consistently and with excellence.
Yeah.
And yeah, that's good. And so, sometimes I think we do management when we should be engaged in leadership,
Right.
and vice versa.
And like
too.
you said, they're easily confused, or people think they're interchangeable. But I think if you get down to it, they're not. They are two separate things.
Yeah.
Something you had said a moment ago about pastors don't necessarily get trained in that,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
it's when you said that, I'm like, oh, I guess they don't. It's funny, just because aren't they the first people though that you look to, not only just for leadership of your church, but even when everything's falling apart in the world, or there's something happening in culture or politically, and you're just like, hey, I don't know how I'm supposed to feel about this. Am I a bad person if I think this thing? Am I, and that pastors are the first group of people that,
Yeah.
a couple of hundred people turn their head to say, hey, I need you to tell me what I'm supposed to think about this, because clearly you're close to the big guy. Can you tell me what I'm supposed to be thinking, or how I'm supposed to feel, or how am I supposed to respond to my circles when they're, and everything. And so it's just, when you said that, I was like, oh, that's like interesting. Yeah, I guess they don't take a crash course on how to handle every thing in the world and then be able to translate it perfectly and tell their congregations how to feel.
Yeah. And I shouldn't say there's no training for pastors.
I hear you.
Our seminaries generally do provide some leadership training.
Right.
It's usually not the main focus.
Yeah.
And sometimes, I think oftentimes pastors, after they've been out serving for a few years, they realize, I need way more leadership training than I've had at this point.
Yeah.
And they are leaders. Sometimes churches don't allow pastors or other ministry leaders to lead, and that can lead to problems.
Yeah.
But yeah, you look at, especially the during the pandemic here, in the early stages of it, a lot of pastors had to they had a lot of leadership tasks in front of them, and they were it was just amazing for me to watch pastors take on some of these leadership challenges so well.
Right. Yeah.
And to
when
step up in the face
no
of
one
crisis.
was an expert. No one knew what they were doing. There was no one to look to.
Yeah. And I think especially leadership is really important now, in a time where we don't know what's coming. It's hard to plan, for ministry more than 3 or 4 weeks out.
Right.
Everything is changing.
Yes.
No one's been where we're going.
Exactly.
And there's no maps that are charted right now for this season of ministry.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And that's to your question about kind of being here at Tuscarora during COVID. I think one thing that's good, if I can use that word, is I think COVID there's been blessings in disguise all over the past couple of months, and even just the way that Tuscarora's, the obvious ones, like, hey, we were even able to reopen. The generosity of the folks here at Tuscarora who gave financially and are still giving. But the one thing, when you mentioned the unknowns, which is normally something I would like, scream and throw myself off my chair, because I'm like, oh, I really like things planned out. And so, like, boy, coronavirus I've thrown crumpled more plans up and thrown them over my shoulder in the past 6 months. But the exciting thing that God's whispering is, hey, look what I'm doing over here. And all of the ways that the opportunities Tuscarora has to do ministry that might look different. We have a ministry model that has worked well for nearly 50 years. And that's not to say that ministry model is bad or still doesn't have a place here at Tuscarora. But what's exciting to think is what kind of like the branches on a tree, what's growing off the trunk of Tuscarora? Is there when a tree's growing, you trim it to help it grow and new growth happen. What has coronavirus, what opportunities has it opened up for Tuscarora to do new ministries, to do
Yeah.
new things, or the ministry we're doing might look a little different for a while, maybe forever. We don't know. We don't have those answers, but it's opened up the door to some new ministries here at Tuscarora that we'll be launching and announcing here in the next couple of weeks. But we're so excited, and it's like if COVID hadn't happened and nothing was wrong with what we were doing, we were plugging along, and like I said, the ministry model we're using was working. It was great. People love coming here. We love having them. It was a great system. But then, now we have the opportunity to maybe branch out and try some new things that we never would have had the capacity to even think about doing, or wasn't even a thought in our mind to do. And now we might have the chance to launch into some new ministries, and that's just really exciting. And it wouldn't have happened if COVID hadn't happened. And, and so it's just exciting to think about that, and not again, like I said earlier, miss those places where God is working, and not say, no, God, this is what our ministry is. We're going to be over here. I see you're doing something over there, but like being like, okay, well, let me wander over, and his plans seem to always be better than mine. Let's see what God has planned and join him there. And so I think it's exciting as we're gearing up to do some of that in these next couple of months.
Yeah, that's great. That's exciting.
Yeah.
And it's been really exciting to see innovation happening here at Tuscarora.
Yeah.
And I know, we're not out of the woods on this.
Right.
And God has provided, and people have been generous and everything. But I know, we have a camp nearby where I live that had to close early on in this, and just makes you all that much more thankful that Tuscarora has found ways to creatively kind of re-examine its model of ministry. So thank you for your part in that.
It's a lot of, I think thinking outside of the box is a new phrase that I'm adding into the list of new normal that I also just, I'm fed up with it, but it's easy to do what you've always done, but it's, if God's clearly pointing you in maybe not a new direction, but just wanting you to notice something else that he's doing, it's important to not ignore that.
Yeah. Wow. So speaking of management, I was wondering, are there a couple things, one or two things that you have learned about managing well in a Christian organization? So a lot of our listeners they're pastors, elders, ministry leaders, and they all have some of these types of responsibilities that you have. So are there a couple of things that you've learned along the way that about managing well in a Christian organization that we'd all benefit from hearing?
So, and I don't know if I'd say managing well at all. I am a big cheerleader for understanding how people are wired and making sure that you are communicating to them the way they need to be communicated to, and that the personality types and the strengths, and I think that's a huge part of, if the team is healthy, I'm going to go as far as say that the ministry is healthy, that the work is good, the work is better, more productive. If there are communication breakdowns and misunderstandings, and not just because you like things done in 3 sentences, this person might need more explanation, and just making sure that I'm going to say, managing to someone's how somebody's wired. I mean, that's one of the beautiful things, is God's made us, each of us, so incredibly differently, but and that can be frustrating sometimes, but it can be really good and beautiful as well. And I think too, maybe just letting go is okay. I mean, a sign of a good leader is somebody who works themselves out of a job because they have entrusted and trained and brought up essentially their replacement, and then they move on. And so I think when you cling to something that's unhealthy, and I think it only holds you back and potentially has a ripple effect damaging the people that work for you or around you. But I think there's something about empowering and trusting the people who work with you and for you, because if you're all helping each other, kind of over a wall, you're hoisting somebody up, in the end, aren't we all going to end up better for it anyway? You're all going to end up on the other side of the wall. Yep. So I do think just training and giving and empowering and growing the people around you helps them and you, because essentially they always say plan to train your replacement, and then move on to the next thing God has. And that's not to say you should never be content with where you are, but that's just I think the clinging or holding so tightly to something can be detrimental if we're not careful.
Yeah, that's so true. And I think we all naturally think, well, the things I do are what give me importance and value.
Right.
So I can't let anyone else do them,
right,
or I lose my value.
Yeah.
And in reality, when we empower and equip others, our influence grows.
Exactly.
Our impact
grows.
It explodes. I mean, it gets so much bigger.
Yeah. When here at Tuscarora, it's like, I don't even, if it's for the ministry, it's for the ministry. I don't even care. I don't even need them to know who I am, what I do, or something. It says if the ministries, if I can do something to help the ministry happen, and have somebody, if I have helped to orchestrate an event that allowed someone to have a one-on-one conversation or meeting with God on the ground, on a bench, in the auditorium, wherever, then that's why I just did all of that work, then that's what makes it important.
Oh, that's great. Yeah. Well, you may have answered my next couple of questions already. Let me throw these out here anyway. But what's one what's one characteristic or trait that you think every leader should have? Or it'd be good for every leader to have?
I think, like I did say, the one is the ability to let go. So that, but I am going to say the ability to care, which I think is a lot easier said. I think it's easy to be like, oh, of course I care about the people who work for me, but do you know that I think relationship is important, and that's not to say I do it well all of the time, or perhaps at all. It is something that you have people who are naturally relational and people who are task oriented, and I'm more task oriented. So I'm like, great, how are you going to help me get this done? Yeah. But that's not helpful. So it's just or I referenced my one boss I had, and you felt this guy truly cares about the people who work for him, and it would just be just a few minutes of hey, how you doing? Hey, how's that thing, or whatever, or something like that, and just asking some questions that care. But I think taking a genuine interest in the people who work for you makes them feel like $1 million, and I think that creates a better environment for everyone.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Wow. So that's so true, and I think when I've had a challenge as a leader, with someone, oftentimes there's a lack of relationship there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And it makes it so much more difficult to work on it.
Right.
Yeah. On the flip side of that, what's like one trait or behavior that you have seen derail leaders? Something that, either a habit, some kind of characteristic that trips people up often.
My initial thought is, but again, this could speak to people are going to feel differently, or this might speak to me. I think micromanaging people is detrimental to them. I think it's detrimental to the leader. I think employees feel that means they're not trusted, or it creates, I'm going to go as far as to say, a lazy employee, because they are like, well, they're just going to come behind me and correct and fix everything anyway, so I don't need to do that. So I think micromanaging can be a big pitfall for a lot of leaders, because and I've been here too. It's easy. I have it how I see it in my head, but I have to tell you how to do it, but you're not doing it. So it's easy to say, okay, just move. Let me just do it, and to do it. But then I'm not helping you grow as a person. And all I've done is now added more work to my day, because I had to do the project I was supposed to give you plus my my normal work, and I in turn kind of potentially crippled you as in your development. So I do think micromanagement can be detrimental to an organization, and some leaders may have a reason for why they do that, or they feel they have to. But I do think, maybe on the flip side of that, I think trust is very important. Or just because we've always done something this way doesn't mean if you let a person spread their wings and fly, that they're not going to go and do great things, because you weren't keeping them down here where you thought they needed to be. Wow. So I think I think you can good things can come out of it when you can stop, and it's not always easy.
Can you unpack what micromanagement means a little bit? Because I think that gets misunderstood, and sometimes people that have never been managed or supervised think good management is micromanagement.
Yeah, that's a good point.
And also some people that they've only been micromanaged, they may think that's normal. So how would you explain or kind of define micromanagement?
So, I
love that you went here, by the way. This is so great. Yeah.
So I do think that there is a place for accountability and checking in. Yeah. And, again, I shouldn't just give you a project and walk away and come back 3 weeks later and be like, you got that thing done yet? There's a place for, again, going back to what we talked about with relationship and everything. Obviously, a good leader cares about the outcome. That's important. I think when you feel that you need to touch every element of the process that gets you from A to Z, I would question whether or not that was healthy or needed. But I do think that there is the ability to, again, identify your employees' strengths and weaknesses, see how they work well and how they complement each other, and put people where they're best suited. So then when you hand over a plan or an idea that you want to see come to fruition, there's the release. There needs to be a little bit of release there to trust them who are under you. And if you've done your job well, they will do their job well. You don't need to sit there and touch each piece to get you to the end result.
Yeah. Would you say, good management is, I'm going to give you a task to do. I'm going to give you some boundaries, some guidance up front. I'm here we'll check in at these key points. What I'm asking you for is this outcome. And what I'm leaving to you to discern is how you're going to carry that out, within the boundaries that I've laid out. Leave some of the decisions to you, leave the details of the process you're going to walk through to you.
Right.
And if you need help, I'm here.
I think that is excellent too, because the details of the process, that person might be sitting on some brilliant idea that you hadn't thought of, because your way was going to take a different path. Yeah. And in addition to that too, if a correction has to be made, if they did go completely off the rails and didn't, they're going a complete wrong direction and you need to steer them back. Yeah. I'll say correcting in love and teaching. It's not just saying, oh, you did this wrong, I'm going to do it. It's it's teaching, hey, I see you started to go this way. Tell me why. Okay, what if we thought about and we went, what about if we did this instead? And help them learn, or else you're going to constantly be chasing them down and needing to redirect them. So there's confrontation is too strong of a word, but you might need to go kind of grab them by the back of the shirt and say, hey, hang on, like let's talk about why you did this, and if they really can't go that direction and you need them to go a different direction, you can teach them. That's something too, is about a good leader is always teachable, but is also able to teach others and correct in a loving way.
Yeah. What do you do to keep growing as a leader and manager?
A lot of prayer, Ryan. A lot of prayer. Well, what's funny, and I am not saying that this is wrong in any way, but when I was in my 20s and starting out,
So prayer is wrong. Is
prayer is correct.
Oh,
prayer is very correct.
All right.
I read a lot of leadership books and all sorts of stuff, and you have debates out there if leadership is a learned thing or is natural. And I think people are on two different sides of the fence there. But I read all these books. I'm like, oh, I've gotta be a good leader. I'm gonna read all these books as if magically I would. And I'm not saying that those were bad, or that reading a leadership book or a book on how to do something is bad at all. But I don't think that's the only way. I think how I grew the most, and the way that I would encourage others, is by observing the traits in people in your life. Find somebody who you think is a good leader and identify what you like about, what are the things that you think makes them a good leader, and do you have those things, or how can you, is it a learned thing? Is it a something that is just a natural, like I said earlier, relationship is not my natural go-to. I have to stop and mentally switch and go there, because I want to get the task done. And so observing that, that just a few gentle, casual words of conversation every day really can do more for a relationship, in a workplace than you'd think.
Wow, that's good. That's good. My final question for you today. If someone's listening and they are just getting into one of their first leadership roles, where they're making decisions, or they're setting direction for their ministry, or they're influencing others in some way, they're just in some kind of initial leadership role, what advice would you give to someone that sat down for coffee with you and said, Sara, how can I be a good leader?
That's good. My first thought is, you don't know it all. If you're good, you're never an expert, because there's always room to grow and learn new things. Wow. And I would say don't be afraid to launch yourself or move yourself. Sometimes I feel people are like, if I apply for that position, or if I do this, I'm going to hurt this I'm going to have to leave this. Sometimes you need to do what's best for yourself, because again, if it's aligning with the word and God's plan and everything, it might be selling your house and leaving your church and leaving your friends, but knowing that God has something better planned for you. So not being afraid to launch yourself, even if it's unknown or uncomfortable. But I would say because that's the only way you're going to keep growing, is by doing that. You can be comfortable, but you can also be stagnant if you're there. And that's not to say that comfort is bad, but to be looking, how am I supposed to grow? What am I supposed to be learning? Especially when it's a crummy situation, or a situation that you're like, God, I don't understand. Everything was good. Why did this happen? But instead of sitting there in that, God, clearly this happened because you want me to learn something, and you have something else. You're not just going to leave me here. You're picking me up and putting me somewhere else. But what lesson? What am I supposed to take away from here that you're going to make part of my story when I go forward? So I would say that you don't know it all. Don't be afraid to learn and understand that no matter how, I'm going to say, high you get in an organization, or I mean, eventually you get to the top, in a church, but to not be afraid to know that doesn't necessarily mean you're the expert. There's always surround yourself with people who complement your weaknesses and can help you grow to be better. Don't get comfortable.
Oh, that's good. Great advice and a great note to end on. Thank you so much.
Thank you
Sara.
so much, Ryan. I appreciate it.
Thanks for your insights. And
No, this was an opportunity that I was thrilled, and I am lucky and very thankful.
Oh, it's a pleasure to have you as a guest, and thanks for your hospitality here at Tuscarora.
No problem. It's what we do.
Thanks.
Sara, thanks for being our guest today. We really appreciated you sitting down with Ryan at Tuscarora for sharing all the things that you love, being organized, putting together good management skills with a bunch of people, and how that can be related to our ministry. So we hope that other people found a benefit in it and listening to our listeners. Thanks for tuning in. We'd love to cover topics that you would be looking for more input on or that you find interesting. And if you have any, please email us. You can comment below if you're seeing any, if you're able to comment on any of it. Otherwise, you can email us at podcast@clbforge.org. Don't forget to subscribe to the podcast so that when a new one drops on Tuesdays, you will be the first one to hear it. Don't forget about the presents that Ryan's going to give out for those who comment. And we would love it if you could share the podcast with a friend or a colleague. Thank you so much, Sara, for being our guest, and thank you for listening. Have a great day.